the major concerns were during the Progressive Era? Picture the late 19th century stretching into the early 20th, a period marked by rapid industrialization, massive immigration, and urban expansion. This was the Progressive Era, a time of great change in America's social, economic, and political landscape. From the 1890s to the 1920s, the country was grappling with the implications of its growth and transformation. As cities swelled, so did the problems associated with urban life. The political sphere was riddled with corruption and social injustices were rampant. But it was also a time of reform as individuals and groups sought to address these issues, striving to create a more equitable society. It was an era of both challenges and opportunities, of struggles and breakthroughs. So what were the major concerns that defined this pivotal time? Let us delve into the top 10 concerns that marked this transformative period. Number 10 on our list is urbanization. As the 19th century gave way to the 20th, the United States experienced a dramatic shift. Factories and industries sprouted in cities, luring people from rural areas and even overseas. This rapid urban growth, driven by industrialization and immigration, transformed the country's landscape. But it wasn't all glitter and gold. The cities swelled, teeming with people, and problems began to emerge. Overcrowding became the norm in many urban areas. Poor sanitation was a widespread issue, turning cities into breeding grounds for diseases. Public services struggled to keep up with the burgeoning population, leading to inadequate housing, education, and healthcare. The glow of progress was marred by these significant challenges. Urbanization, while a symbol of advancement and opportunities, also underscored the need for social reforms and better urban planning. Urbanization brought progress but also significant challenges. At number 9, we have corruption. During the Progressive Era, corruption was a widespread issue that permeated both politics and business. It was an era where political machines, such as Tammany Hall in New York, held an enormous amount of power. These organizations, often led by a single influential figure, controlled the votes of citizens through bribery and intimidation. They also manipulated the economy, making themselves and their allies wealthy at the expense of the public. Corruption wasn't limited to just politics either. Business tycoons, often referred to as robber barons, exploited their workers and manipulated markets to amass immense fortunes. They often did so with the help of corrupt politicians who turned a blind eye to their practices. But the Progressive Era was also a time of change. Efforts to curb this rampant corruption began to take shape. Laws were enacted, regulations were tightened, and a sense of social responsibility began to grow. Corruption became a roadblock to progress, demanding reform. Social injustice takes the 8th spot. During the Progressive Era, the social inequalities that pervaded society were brought into sharp focus. The gap between the rich and the poor, between the privileged and the disadvantaged, was glaringly apparent. Labor exploitation was rampant, with workers often subjected to harsh conditions, long hours, and meager pay. Child labor was another dire issue, as children as young as 6 were sent to work in factories, mines, and fields, deprived of their childhood and education. The struggle for women's rights also gained momentum during this period, as women fought tirelessly for suffrage and equal opportunities. These injustices ignited a fierce determination in the hearts of many to fight for a more equitable society. They spurred on the labor movement, the women's suffrage movement, and numerous other social reform initiatives. The fight against these social injustices was not an easy one, but it was a fight that defined the era. The fight for social justice became a cornerstone of the Progressive Era. Moving on to concerns 4 to 7. In the heart of the Progressive Era, the plight of the working class was a significant concern. The industrial boom had brought with it poor working conditions with long hours, low wages, and unsafe environments. Workers, including children, were often exploited and left with little to no rights. This dire situation sparked the formation of labor unions and the fight for better working conditions, an essential cornerstone of the progressive movement. Next, we delve into the lack of consumer protection. With the rise of industry, products were being mass-produced and sold to the public with little to no regard for safety or quality. The food industry in particular was a hotbed for unsanitary practices, leading to widespread health concerns. This led to the push for laws such as the Pure Food and Drug Act, aiming to protect consumers from harmful goods. And then there was racial discrimination. Despite the abolition of slavery, racial inequality was still rampant during this era. African Americans and other minorities were often denied basic human rights and faced systemic discrimination. The struggle for racial equality became a significant part of the progressive movement, with activists such as Webb Du Bois advocating for equal rights and opportunities for all, regardless of race. Lastly, let's focus on environmental degradation. The rapid industrialization and urbanization of this era led to severe environmental damage. Forests were cut down, rivers were polluted, and wildlife was driven to extinction. The reckless exploitation of natural resources prompted the rise of conservationist ethos, with voices like John Muir advocating for the preservation of nature and the establishment of national parks. These concerns further underscored the need for sweeping reforms. Education takes the number 2 spot. Now let's delve into the progressive era's concern for educational reform. It was a time when the nation's leaders and citizens alike recognized the importance of education as a means to uplift society. With the advent of industrialization, the need for a literate and skilled workforce became more pressing than ever. The establishment of public schools was seen as a solution to this need. Across the nation, schools were built, teachers were trained, and curricula were developed, but the ambition didn't stop there. The push for compulsory education became a significant movement. Advocates argued that every child, regardless of their socioeconomic background, should have access to quality education. They believed that an educated citizenry would be the foundation of a more equitable and prosperous society. These efforts weren't without their challenges, but the determination to create a more educated populace was unwavering. Education became a beacon of hope in these challenging times. Public health comes in at number 1. The progressive era was a time of rapid industrialization and urbanization, which unfortunately also led to an increase in public health crises. Sweeping epidemics of diseases like tuberculosis, typhoid, and cholera were a grim reality caused by overcrowded living conditions, poor nutrition, and inadequate sanitation. In response to these crises, public health departments were established across the country. These departments, often run by dedicated and forward-thinking individuals, started to implement health regulations and launch campaigns to educate the public about hygiene and disease prevention. The push for sanitation was particularly significant, leading to the construction of public sewers and the implementation of trash collection services. Public health was not just a concern, it was a call to action. It was a rallying cry for reformers who saw the need for change and took the steps necessary to bring it about. The concern for public health became a catalyst for change. Now that we've discussed the major concerns, let's look at the impact of the progressive era. This period, stretching from the 1890s to the 1920s, was a time of great social and political change. The issues that dominated this era, urbanization, corruption, social injustice, education, and public health, sparked a wave of reforms that left an indelible mark on the American landscape. The rampant urbanization of this time led to a focus on city planning and housing reform. As cities swelled with immigrants and rural migrants, the need for proper housing and infrastructure became evident. This need spurred the creation of building codes, zoning laws, and public housing projects, elements of city life we take for granted today. In response to the pervasive corruption of the era, political reform became a central focus. Progressive leaders pushed for increased transparency and accountability in government, leading to the adoption of initiatives like the direct primary, the secret ballot, and campaign finance laws. These measures sought to return power to the people, a cornerstone of our democratic values. The fight against social injustice during the progressive era led to significant advancements in workers' rights and women's suffrage. Labor laws were enacted to limit work hours, prohibit child labor, and ensure safer working conditions. Meanwhile, the tireless advocacy of women suffragists culminated in the passage of the 19th Amendment, granting women the right to vote. Education and public health also saw great strides during this period. The emphasis on education reform resulted in compulsory education laws, while the public health movement brought about sanitation improvements and disease prevention measures. The legacy of the progressive era is profound. It laid the groundwork for many aspects of modern American life, from our city's structures to our political system, from workers' rights to women's suffrage, and from our education system to our public health policies. It was a time of great upheaval, but also a time of great progress. The Progressive Era, a tumultuous time, brought about lasting changes in American society. As we draw to a close, let's reflect on the Progressive Era. This was a time of profound change, a period marked by urbanization, corruption, and social injustice. Our cities grew at an unprecedented rate, giving rise to new challenges and opportunities. Corruption was rampant, permeating every level of society, but it was the tireless efforts of reformers that brought about much-needed change. Social injustice was a harsh reality, but the Progressive Era saw the first steps towards greater equality. The list of concerns during this era is long, including education and public health. The fight for better education for all, as well as the push for improved public health standards, were significant battles fought during this time. This era was not merely a period of struggle, but of transformation. It was a time that shaped and defined the nation we know today. In the face of adversity, the Progressive Era stands as a testament to the power of reform and the resilience of the American spirit.